Today we're going to talk about two of Ireland's youngest killers. But before we get started, welcome to True Crime with Maneater. If you love all things true crime, including missing person cases, cold cases, and just the strange happenings of the world, you've come to the right place. Be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. Let's get started. Anna Kriégel was a 14-year-old girl living in Ireland. She had been adopted at the age of 2 from Russia, and her parents said that because of this, she was a bit behind at school. Obviously, when they brought her home from Russia, she was pretty much speaking Russian, so she had to learn English, and this did set her behind academically. Her mother said she wasn't really naturally academically inclined, and hearing issues also kind of compounded this issue. But overall, she was a sweet and loving girl. She loved to watch movies with her mom and have some popcorn and just hang out. Unfortunately, Anna was being bullied at school, and because of this, she really didn't have many friends. Her father would say that she was a bit of a loner, but she did have her cousins, and she really enjoyed spending time with them. Anna loved to make YouTube videos. That was one of her favorite hobbies, and Anna would make videos about makeup or clothes or dancing, and she had 100 subscribers. And most of the comments were pretty nice, but one comment actually told Anna to go die. And I want to pause here because I think it's really important to point out that just because you're on the internet, it's really not okay to post comments like that, berating or harassing someone. It's just really unkind, and I just feel terrible for people that have to deal with that. And I think we can all learn to just move along if we don't have anything nice to say. So not only did one viewer tell Anna to go die, another viewer said that they would have her executed. And this is just really terrible because she was such a sweet girl just doing something she loved, and she was being bullied even at home making YouTube videos. It's just a shitty situation. Geraldine, Anna's mother, was a senior manager at a legal department, and Anna's father, Patrick, actually had retired from teaching French. On May 14, 2018, Anna reminded her mother that she would need a note because she had counseling at 2:30 p.m., so she would need the note to get out of school. Anna had been attending counseling once a week at that point. Geraldine wrote the note, kissed Anna goodbye, and headed for work. Anna would later put on her school uniform, have some breakfast, and head out the door to go to school. Eventually, Anna would return home, have some lunch, and then go to her counseling appointment. After counseling, she came home, she had a snack, and went to her bedroom. And that was around the time she called her mother. Anna and her mother actually stayed in contact quite a bit throughout the day. Unfortunately, when Anna called her mother at 4:02 p.m., Geraldine was in a meeting, so she couldn't take the call. But she would text Anna and say, "I'll call you back in a little bit." Anna's father was actually outside just relaxing and getting some sunshine when around 4:55 p.m. he heard the doorbell. I'm going to stop here and just explain something really quickly. Because this is Ireland and those involved are underage, I'm only going to be able to identify them as boy A and boy B. I don't know their real names. I don't know anything about them other than boy A and boy B. So Patrick gets up, he goes to the front door, and he opens it. Standing at the door was boy B, and he was asking for Anna. So Anna's father says, "Okay, 1 minute." He goes to Anna and he says, "Hey, boy B is at the door." And for a second, Anna is kind of confused. She, of course, knew who the boy was, but they hadn't been friends. But either way, Anna was probably curious what this boy wanted, so she went to the door and talked to boy B. So Anna's father is actually kind of watching from a distance, and he's noticing that Anna is kind of by the door, and she's talking to boy B, and she's whispering. And he didn't think this was strange because really, it's what teenagers do when they don't want to be heard by their parents who are clearly eavesdropping. Anna would run back upstairs really quickly and grab her favorite hoodie before telling her father that she was going to go out for a little bit. Patrick, of course, told Anna, "Hey, you're supposed to be studying. You do have exams coming up. You have to get your studying done this evening." Of course, Anna told him, "I know, but I won't be long." And Patrick would say that I believe she meant it, meaning she never lied to him. She did mean that she would be back pretty quickly. After Anna left, Patrick realized that he hadn't asked Anna where she was going. So he looked out the door and noticed that Anna was walking towards St. Catherine's Park. The boy who came, boy B, was walking ahead of her, and he was carrying a small backpack. And it didn't appear to Anna's father that the two had been talking as they were walking. It just seemed like Anna was following behind the boy. As I mentioned earlier, Anna was a bit of a loner. She was bullied. Children really were not nice to her for really no reason. So Patrick was surprised when somebody actually came to the house looking for her, but he said that Anna was so happy. She left, she gave him a big smile. She just seemed radiant over the fact that somebody came to talk to her. At the time, Anna's mother was actually on her way home, and she had been on the train. While on the train, she was actually chatting with a friend, and when the friend got off, she finally realized that she needed to call her daughter back. So around 5:10 p.m. that evening, Geraldine gave a call to her daughter Anna, but unfortunately, it went straight to voicemail. Anna's mother didn't worry about this because she was just about home, so she knew she would talk to her when she got there. When Anna's mother arrived home, she went to the backyard to the garden where she found her husband. So he told Geraldine that Anna went out with boy B and that she'd be back shortly. But almost immediately, Geraldine became incredibly concerned about her daughter. And she told her husband, I don't understand why boy B was here. He has nothing to do with Anna. And remember, Anna and her mother were pretty close, so I'm sure they talked about things like this. They knew she was struggling. They knew she was having a hard time in school. And Geraldine would even say that nobody calls for Anna, so she was incredibly suspicious and worried. And then she felt kind of like she was being an overbearing mother because she was so worried. And Anna's mother was so concerned because of how badly her daughter had been bullied. It was just this never-ending cycle of abuse. She couldn't escape it. And Anna's mother would obviously feel very protective over Anna because not only was it their first child, Anna really did struggle. When they adopted her, doctors actually found a tumor in the girl's ear, and it required a 5.5-hour operation just to remove it. And because of this, she could barely hear from her right ear. She also had poor eyesight and a scar on the back of her head from the surgery. And as she became a teenager, she actually suffered from a condition where her bones grew faster than her muscles, and that was actually very painful. And unfortunately, Anna also suffered from suicidal thoughts. She was really struggling with her mental health after primary school ended. And although Anna was excited about going to secondary school, her parents and teachers were actually very concerned for her. One of Anna's teachers actually told Anna's parents that she was actually very concerned and a little bit worried about Anna going to secondary school. She said that Anna was so innocent and she felt that other children were going to take advantage of this. So Anna's parents were actually really on top of this. Before school even started, they had met with administration and just said, we know that Anna's going to be a target of bullies. You know, we want to address this issue right now. And they weren't wrong. Before school even started, students were bullying her. Anna was bullied by third-year students who were obviously much older than her, and they sent her sexually suggestive messages. And most of the time, it was because she was very tall. By the time Anna was actually 13, she was really tall. She was 5 foot and 8 inches. And obviously, this made her look much older than she was. Unfortunately, these awful people would bully Anna because she was adopted. They would tell her that she has a fake mom and dad. And although Geraldine and Patrick took screenshots of this and took it to the administration, nothing was really done about it. And this bullying would actually only become more violent on one Halloween. Anna loved to volunteer, and on one Halloween, she had been supervising a disco for children. And on her way home, as she's walking, 4 boys approached her. And I'm sure Anna was a little bit worried at this point. I know I would be if 4 boys approached me and I'm walking home alone. They're repeatedly asking her for sex. And of course, Anna's just trying to get home. She's telling them no, she's walking away. And one of them ends up hitting her. Anna ran home and she was hysterical. She was terrified. She was deeply upset by the situation. She told her parents what happened, and of course they made a report. Apparently one of the boys received a caution. And this whole story just makes me so sad because she was a young girl who just really wanted friends, and to no fault of her own was being just bullied and ridiculed for no reason. She just went through so much abuse, and that just makes me so sad for her. Anna was a kind-hearted, loving girl who just loved to be around her parents and her family, but she really desperately needed friends. Anna's father would go on to say that people didn't understand her. She was unique and full of fun. She couldn't hate anyone, even though some of the people were bullying her. She was disappointed with people. That happened quite regularly. She tried to make friends, but might say the wrong thing. She was a teenager. Eventually, her parents would realize that she was in crisis. She started acting out, there was fights at school, and they began to really worry about her. Anna had even told her father that she felt invisible. At one point, Anna actually made some fake social media accounts and sent bullying messages to herself. Her parents eventually found out and told her that they needed all the passwords to her social media. And although Anna didn't like it, she did give her passwords to her parents. I just want to stop here and make sure that nobody's passing judgment on Anna. She was in crisis mode. She was deeply struggling. She felt very alone, and she was attention seeking. And that's really not out of the norm for teenagers to do when they're in this type of place, or just in general. When teenagers feel like they're not getting enough attention or things like that, they might attention seek. So I don't want anybody to judge her on these things. It does feel pretty normal for a 14-year-old to do. So Anna's parents immediately knew that they had to get her help. They approached Kildare Youth Services, but unfortunately, because Anna had self-harmed and was feeling suicidal, they couldn't help her. But they did send her to another place that deals specifically with that. That place actually ruled that Anna was very low risk for suicide, so she was able able to go to counseling. But Anna's father had to pick her up every day from counseling because she was scared to walk home alone. She was scared of these boys bullying her, and I can't blame her. I mean, she was literally attacked on the street. So on that Monday, May 14th, after Anna's mother arrives home and she's starting to get worried about Anna, she actually would send a text message to her daughter around 5:30 p.m. And it was just a 2-word message saying home now. But there was no response, and that was very much unlike Anna. Before sending another message, she talked to her husband about it. They both agreed that she needed to send it. The message would say, answer me now or I'm calling the police. She knew that saying she was going to call the police would get Anna's attention and make her come home. And of course, Geraldine felt really uncomfortable at this moment. She didn't know if she was being a paranoid mother just because of everything Anna had gone through, and I'm sure she was worried about suicide as well. But she did know that she went away with a boy that she didn't really know and that she didn't spend any time with in general. So Geraldine would actually take a walk to the park that Patrick had last saw Anna walking towards. And unfortunately, Anna's mother couldn't find Anna. So she walked back home and gave Anna a little more time. But after dinner, she began increasingly to worry. So she jumped in her car and began searching for her daughter. And she knew that Anna loved to go on long walks, so she was going to have to do a bit of driving. So once she got home, her and her husband actually got on Anna's Facebook to look up Boy B. They wanted to know who he was. They didn't really know him, but they knew of him. So Geraldine began calling people associated with Anna in hopes to figure out who this boy was, but she didn't have any luck. So her and Patrick actually left their house and they went to a friend's house who was actually a retired detective. And he told them, go straight to the police right now. And at that point, Anna had been gone for hours. The police would take her seriously, but they didn't feel like she had reason to be concerned. Anna's Russian passport was still at home, and the police would receive dozens of missing children reports a week, and most of the time the children just came home. But the police would actually locate Boy B's address and go over to his home that evening. Boy B would tell the police that yes, he went to Anna's, he picked her up, they walked to the park, and then he left her there around 5:40 p.m. The next day, Anna's family obviously got up, lots of friends and family joined, and they began searching for Anna. They went to the park and they just spoke to anybody to see if anybody had seen Anna at any point. The police were also actively involved at this point. They were also worried about Anna. They actually returned to the house of Boy B and began to question him again. And Boy B would say, yeah, I went to Anna's, but it was for Boy A. And that was the first time they realized that somebody else might be involved in this. So it turns out that Anna had actually had a crush on Boy A, but apparently Boy A didn't like her back. So Boy A had actually told Boy B to go get Anna because I want to meet up with her, to tell her that I'm not interested in her. Of course, this sounds suspicious because Boy A could just tell her in school, or he could call the house and say, listen, I'm not interested, please don't talk to me. So Boy B said he went to get Anna, he brought her to the park, and then he left her there with Boy A. Then he went home and he did his homework. So the investigator on the case would actually take Boy B and have him go to the park and show him where he went with Anna that day. So Boy B said, okay, we came in the park here, this is where we went Boy A, and then I left. And on the afternoon of Tuesday, May 15th, the general media would be alerted to Anna's disappearance. So obviously after the media gets a hold of this, a lot of tips came pouring into the police station. But unfortunately, none of them panned out. As an investigator is kind of doing a search on his own, he's walking around, he's looking in the park, he goes and he decides to search a railway. He's actually stopped by a man and his son, and this man says, hey, I heard about Anna's disappearance, and you should check the back of this local sewage plant. A lot of teenagers actually hang out there. Later that day, the investigator would realize the man who stopped him was actually Boy A's father, and Boy A was with his father that day. So on that same day, that Tuesday afternoon, they decided to take Boy B back to the park, but this time with Boy A. And I want to note that at this point, they were treated as witnesses and not suspects. Two detectives take both boys and Boy A's father and take them to the park. But this time, Boy B was actually leading them on a different route than he had earlier that day. And the boys would actually come to a BMX pathway and stop and look at each other. And the detective would say once he saw them look at each other, he knew that both boys knew something more. And that was the first time he realized that they were potential suspects. So both boys were taken to the station, and of course they said they had no idea what happened to Anna. Boy A would basically say that Boy B was his best friend, and that Boy B had called Boy A after school that day while Boy A was doing his chores. And on the phone, they decided to meet at the park. He said when Boy B arrived, he was actually with Anna, but he didn't know Anna very well. He would also say that Anna basically came up to him and said, I have something to ask you. I was wondering if you wanted to go out with me. He said he was surprised, but he kind of knew that Anna liked him because she had sort of asked him out before. He said that he tried to tell her gently that he didn't want to be with her. He said, "I'm sorry, I'm just not interested." He said that Anna had said nothing in reply and that she walked off and she looked kind of annoyed and sad. He would also say that at this point, boy B had already walked off and was heading home. Boy A said at this point he was going to walk home, and he would walk home until he was attacked by 2 men. He said that these men pulled him down and started kicking him. And the detective would note that boy A had injuries that really did look like he was assaulted. He basically said that he fought off his attackers by kicking one of them in the head and they ran away. The detective felt like this was more of a teenage fantasy than really a truthful story. But detectives had to take this serious, so they took boy A, he had a sketch done, and then they went to the park and questioned people. They would also pull CCTV video to look for the suspects, but they didn't find anybody. And then on Wednesday, May 16th, everybody realized that something serious had happened to Anna, and the investigation really kicked up. They knew that they had to find her. They brought in specialist search teams, including one that actually searched the river for bodies. And then on May 17th, 2018, Anna's body was found in an abandoned farmhouse. So on that Wednesday, police were actually doing a grid search, and they were doing it of the park, and that house was on the land that they were searching. They got to a large field beside the park, and at the end of that field sat the Glenwood house. So one detective was searching around the house, and one actually went inside. It was really dark inside. The windows had been all boarded up, and there was just kind of shimmers of light shining in through the boarded windows. The detective that went inside was having trouble seeing, but he said that he could smell dried blood, and from a distance he thought he could see a mannequin or something terrible. So he called out to whatever was there, and he got no response. So as he approached closer, he soon realized that he had found Anna. Inside, they found Anna, who was stripped naked except for her socks. Her clothing and pieces of her iPhone had been scattered around that room. Nearby, they found a cement block and a stick covered in her blood. And not only were they bloodstained, so was the walls and the carpet. They realized that Anna had been viciously attacked and beaten. Around her neck, there was insulation tape wrapped, and unfortunately, 3 of her fingers were actually still there. She had been trying to get that tape off of her neck. Obviously, they would inform Anna's parents that they found Anna, and that they would later need to identify her at the morgue. This had turned from a missing persons investigation into a murder investigation. The autopsy would later reveal that Anna had a staggering number of wounds. There were bruises and lacerations all over her body. The most serious injuries were around Anna's head, face, and neck. The autopsy would conclude that Anna actually died from blunt force trauma to the head and neck. There were also signs of compression around her neck. She couldn't tell if Anna was conscious at the time, but there was also signs of penetration, although she didn't know what had penetrated Anna. So after receiving the forensics and the pathology report, investigators determined that Anna was most likely brought into the house and was beaten to the ground with a heavy stick as she entered. And then she was hit 4 times with that concrete block. They said that she was pulled to a window that had more light and was sexually assaulted. They found her fake nails all around the room, and it indicated that she fought viciously against her attacker. And there was a lot of forensic material around the room, but unfortunately, it all belonged to Anna. That is until they examined Anna's top, which had semen stains on it. Of course, the investigation quickly turned to the 2 boys, who were the last 2 people known to see Anna. Anna's blood was actually found on boy A's boots. And because boy A claimed that he was assaulted that day, police had his phone. On his phone, they would find some interesting searches. He had taken a screenshot of YouTube for a video called The 15 Most Gruesome Torture Methods in History, Horror Films That Will Blow Everything Away, Until Dawn, Get Jessica's Clothes Off. There's also a search result for Jeff the Killer, and that was apparently about a teenager who murdered his whole family. Of course, that doesn't mean the boy was guilty. I'm sure if you look up my search history, you're going to see a lot of things like that. I mean, I'm here reporting on a crime right now, which meant I had to do a lot of research. But something stood out specifically to the detective. One of the searches in boy A's phone was abandoned places in Lucan, and that put things in a different perspective. So of course, the boys are arrested and their homes are searched. And investigators would start by asking both boys basically if they knew right from wrong and made them give examples, and if they knew what truth versus a lie was, and they both could very much establish the difference between the two. Apparently, boy A would tell police that he was interested in anatomy and the human body and skeletons, and the detective would ask if he liked drawing live people, and he said no, more evolutionary. Of course, they would ask boy A about the blood on his boots, and he was flabbergasted. He said, "No, I was never in that room. I couldn't have done this." And of course, they kept questioning him, and he basically just said no comment or I don't know. He really didn't give them any new information. So basically, boy B was questioned at length, and he would finally admit what happened that day. So they had gone to the house together, boy A, boy B, and Anna. Boy A told boy B to go home, but boy B didn't want to, so he started investigating the house. He would say the sound of shuffling made him run back down to room number 1, which is what detectives were calling the room that Anna was found in. He said that boy A kind of flipped Anna. He described basically a judo-style fight move to the detectives, and then he said that boy A started to choke her and pull her clothes off. He said that Anna was crying at this time, begging boy A to stop. She said, no, don't do this, please stop. He said at this point, both boy A and Anna saw him in the doorway and looked at him, and this prompted him to run away. He said that boy A basically had a blank look on his face when he saw him. They would actually take this interview, print it, and take it over to boy A, and all boy A said about it was, he's lying. In August of 2018, both boys were released on bail. Obviously, they were charged with the murder and rape of Anna. And then on April 30th, 2019, the trial began. And the evidence against boy A was really quite staggering. During the search of his house, they basically found a murder bag. In a backpack in his room, he had gloves and knives, knee pads, shin guards, a homemade mask, and a scarf. He basically carried around a murder kit that day. And Anna's blood was found all over the stuff in this bag. And of course, there was gloves in this bag, which would explain why there's no fingerprints at the scene. Also found in his phone would be pornographic videos, including one video of a woman called Anastasia, which was Anna's real name. And then another was about Russian teens. There were searches for child porn and horse pornography, and of course, that top with semen found on it matched boy A's DNA. Eventually, boy B would tell the police about a conversation him and boy A had a month before Anna's death. He said that boy A approached him and asked him if he wanted to kill somebody. Boy B apparently said no, and boy A was like, why not? And boy B would say, because it's retarded. I don't want to use that word, but that is what is on the transcript, so I'm going to obviously tell you word for word what he said. Boy A would say, oh, come on. Boy B would say, who are you planning on killing? Boy A would say, Anna Kriégel. And boy B would just say, in your dreams. Boy B said he basically assumed that boy A was messing around and making a joke, so he really didn't think much of it. And he kept saying that he really didn't have any idea what was going to happen on the day that Anna died. He didn't believe his friend would actually kill her. So detectives would ask, why didn't you do anything in that room? And he'd basically say, I froze. I didn't know what to do. And he said that he lied to police the day after Anna went missing because he just wanted to forget. He wanted to pretend like it never happened. He would also say that he was scared that boy A would frame him and that he felt terrible about not doing anything to help Anna that day. The detective said, but you could have saved her that day. And boy B would say, I know. He said, why didn't you try and save her? And he said, I don't know. They basically kept accusing him of lying. They said, you went and picked Anna up. You took her to boy A, who threatened to kill her. You know more. You did more than you're letting on to. And he basically said, I didn't know that boy A killed her. I just kept thinking that it isn't real. It isn't happening. He said, I didn't think boy A would do this. He wouldn't do this. It's just not like him. So because two children are being charged with murder, things were done quite differently. The judge wouldn't wear his robe or his wig. The boys were actually allowed to sit with their parents during the trial. And of course, the general public actually wouldn't be allowed inside the courtroom because they were children. They needed to protect the boys' identity and, of course, make the courtroom less intimidating. Really, the only thing connecting boy B to this murder was the fact that he went and picked Anna up and took her to boy A. There was no forensics linking him otherwise. The only evidence they really had was from the interviews, from where boy B talked to the police. Basically, if he hadn't talked to the police, he probably never would have been charged. So on the day that the pathologist came in to talk about Anna's injuries, boy A and boy B were actually removed from the court because it was so violent and graphic, which is crazy because boy A inflicted all of that violence on Anna. They would say that boy A would constantly lay his head on his father's shoulder during the trial, and boy B would hold his mother's hand. As I mentioned earlier, there was a lot of evidence in this case, but the trial really did go quite quickly. One piece of evidence was actually an assignment that boy A had done for school. It was a list of questions and answers. It read, where do you like to hang out? Boy A answered, abandoned places. What is your favorite books? Horror. What are your favorite sports? Combat. What are your favorite movies? Horror and comedy. What are your favorite music? Rap and heavy metal. Single or taken? Single. I would describe myself as crazy, funny, adventurous. I am strange, I think, differently. I feel not much. I hope to do well in life. I feel angry when someone tries to annoy me or hits me. I love steak and drawing. I hate homework. And of course they use this in court because he views himself as strange and thinks differently. They're basically saying that he even knows that something is wrong with him. In Boy B's room, they actually found a notebook containing rules about a satanic cult. And there's a list of group members, including both Boy A and Boy B, as well as the rules. The rules would state, only pledge hosts can give pledges. Don't talk about it. Act normal like nothing happened. No talking about Jesus or God, only Satan. Basically, Boy B would tell detectives that it was a homework club. They refer to Satanism so that no other classmates would want to join, but basically, if they didn't do their homework, they'd borrow it from another person in that group. And they just kind of shared their homework. Eventually, Boy A was found guilty of murder and aggravated sexual assault, and Boy B was guilty of murder. Apparently, upon hearing this, Boy A began to cry, and Boy B just put his head in his hands. Apparently, Boy B's father had an outburst in court. He was very upset about this. He was removed. Eventually, he came back in and just hugged his wife and Boy B and cried. And as the two teens were actually led away, Boy B's father clapped sarcastically and would say, "You bunch of scumbags, you bunch of pricks, innocent boy." And obviously, Patrick and Geraldine are calm, they're composed, they feel good about the verdict. They didn't say anything, they looked at the jurors and nodded, and then they left. So Boy A actually received a life imprisonment sentence with a review after 12 years served. Boy B actually received a 15-year prison sentence with a review after 8 years. And both of the boys will remain anonymous for the rest of their life because they were children when they committed this crime. So Boy A obviously appeared to be quite strange. He even thought differently according to himself. He loved horror movies, he practiced martial arts, but he was never in trouble with the law or anything like that. And as for Boy B, people would say that he was wildly intelligent. He loved to make things with his hands. He was really great with technology. He loved video games, but showed little interest in social media. And a psychologist would actually testify that Boy B would prefer the company of children because he finds them less demanding. He was described as unusual, but not deviant in any way. Boy B's father would describe him as somebody who was hungry for friendship, and he basically believed anything his friends would tell him. And I just think this case is so sad because Boy B should have told somebody, and I want to make this clear. If anybody says something like this to you, even if you think they're kidding, tell somebody. Let somebody in power know. It's not okay for somebody to say that they're going to kill somebody. You don't know if they're telling the truth or not. But had Boy B spoken up and told a principal or a teacher or his parents, Anna could have been alive today. And it's so important to me that everybody knows to not just let things like this roll off their back. Even if somebody was sincerely kidding, which you shouldn't even joke about something like that, at least the person who's in danger has a chance to protect themselves. Anna struggled. She was a sweet, kind girl. She was innocent. She was just looking for friends, and her whole life was taken from her by a boy who just did not care. But that's it for today. If you like this video or any other video on my channel, be sure to subscribe and turn on alerts so you never miss a video upload. If you have a suggestion for a video, place it in the comments below and I'll get to as many of them as possible. And I'd love to know where everybody's from, so pop that in the comments below. Check out the other videos on my channel while you wait, and I'll see you next time.